All right, roll cameras.
Okay. Medical Miracles, scene 1. I don't know all that.
One day every year, it's all about you. You make a wish and you blow out some candles. As we get older, we may not like the number on that cake, but hey, it beats the alternative, we laugh. For the Jack family, adding another candle on a birthday cake is a good thing. How could it be any other way when that alternative was nearly reality for baby Abby? Here's to many happy birthdays to come. April 17th, 2009. It was a stormy day in San Antonio as Rachel Jack buckled her precious 6-month-old daughter into the infant safety seat in the back seat of her SUV and headed out. The plan was to drop little Abby off at Grandma's house so Rachel could go see a neurologist. She'd been having blinding migraines for quite some time and wanted to find out what was going on. She found out all right, but she never made it to her mother's house, let alone the doctor's office. The last thing she remembers was being stopped at the traffic light.
Apparently, I'd had a grand mal seizure at the wheel.
Her foot hit the gas. Witnesses saw her SUV plow head-on into a tree. Rachel's injuries were significant, but not life-threatening. She was rushed by EMS to Brooke Army Medical Center.
And I remember asking about my baby, and they kept telling me that she was at another hospital. She was at University Hospital.
That morning, Rachel's husband and Abby's dad, Darrell, was home working and expecting a call from Rachel. The phone rang.
The first phone call came from her cell phone, but all I could hear was people talking in the background.
He didn't really know what to think. Less than 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was the police.
Asking if I was her husband and telling me that she had been in a car accident.
His confusion turned to terror when they told him to come right away.
When I got there, Rachel was already gone in the ambulance and found Abby in the ambulance with the MS.
He was worried about Rachel, but relieved to hear that it looked like Abby was just a little shaken up.
And she was upset, but not showing any signs of any injuries.
In fact, people who had stopped when they saw the crash found Abby still secure in her safety seat. Thank God, he thought, as the paramedic told him he could either bring her home or let them take her to a hospital to get checked out. At the time, it didn't feel like a life or death decision.
It flashed in my mind for a brief second. Emergency room visits, expensive, doctors, and none of that really mattered.
So, Abby was taken to the North Central Baptist Hospital just to be sure. Fortunately, the emergency room pediatrician there had also worked at University Hospital.
Once she saw the results of the CAT scan and the bleed in Abby's head, she immediately started making arrangements and calling the doctors here directly to tell them to get ready, that she had a critical patient with a head injury.
Dr. David Jimenez, chair of the Department of Neurosurgery at the UT Health Science Center School of Medicine, was on call for the Level 1 Trauma Center at University Hospital.
Once she got here, Dr. Jimenez was already standing by. They evaluated her when we got here, and I can remember how great the team was.
Well, the baby had a huge blood clot on top of her brain. Her brain was being pushed to the other side by the blood clot. The baby was in really bad shape from the injury. One of my mottos and mantras in life has been that you never give up on a baby's brain. So in spite of things looking almost hopeless, I decided that I was going to do everything for her.
He showed me the CAT scan and what they were going to have to do. And he really didn't spend a lot of time knowing how critical Abby was, wasted. He wanted to get her in the emergency, into the surgery as quickly as possible.
The goal was to quickly take her to the operating room, evacuate the hematoma.
It was the first of many operations, and after she came out of the OR, those first words from Dr. Jimenez were hard to take.
There really wasn't any prognosis. It was more, she's critical. The injuries were very severe. We've done all that we can for her, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
I remember Dad looking dazed, and as is appropriate from a parent being in that situation, and telling him that she was in really bad shape, that I wasn't sure if she was going to survive, that the odds were against her, but that we needed to do everything we could.
Her brain had actually been pushed to the side. A third of her skull had to be removed.
He showed us later that it was an active bleed and that the blood was surging and swirling inside her skull. That, this was about a year later that he showed this to us.
He didn't show it to us all at once.
I can't imagine being in a worse situation in life than that. We're telling a parent that the baby, their beautiful baby, is about to die if we don't do something, and also concerned about the possible deficits, because even if the baby lives, what if you end up with a baby who's just basically not functional?
And that was just the first day of a very long journey. Rachel's older daughter Lauren was in school at the time of the crash. At first, she thought it was a joke when her dad David picked her up early. Then the news sunk in.
Your mom's been in an accident. Abby was in the car, and I didn't really know what to think.
Neither did Rachel, who was at BAMC, where doctors were trying to put her mangled body back together.
My ankle and my foot and my heel were broken and pretty badly damaged. I had open fractures, tore my knee up, broke my back in 3 different places, and I had a concussion.
She was in and out of surgery, so her family tried to protect her. But Rachel knew her baby was not okay.
Because nobody would tell me anything. All they would say was, she's fine. You just need to get better. That's all they kept telling me.
4 days after the operation, they allowed her to leave BAMC. Her father picked her up and brought her straight to the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit at University Hospital.
She was very little, in a very big bed, with a lot of she was just so small. She was 6 months old and she was so small. And she had tubes everywhere and her head was bandaged, and it wasn't my baby, but it was my baby.
Over the next 5 weeks, she could only visit Abby for short periods of time, as she was in a great deal of pain and underwent 5 operations during that time.
He never left Abby's side, ever.
The first week was really the hardest. Her head was so swollen that her eyes were swollen shut.
In addition to her critical head injury, Abby had also broken both femurs in the crash. She was kept completely sedated in a harness for her legs. It didn't matter that she was not responding. Darrell knew what he needed to do.
I just talked to her so that she could hear my voice and know that she wasn't there by herself.
For countless days, the theme was one day at a time.
Some days it was just working with the nurses.
Challenge is managing the brain swelling, managing the complications that arise from brain swelling, and keeping the brain from further injury.
I know I can still hear the beeps and the alarms and things that were just constant for what seemed like weeks on end.
There were setbacks, but every day she survived was a good sign.
I can remember one day when we were just thankful that she peed.
There was only one thing Rachel felt she could do that could make a difference.
I just prayed. I prayed.
So many people ask her if she thought her daughter would have permanent brain damage. She always sidestepped the question.
We couldn't even get reassurances past, she'll be okay for today, or maybe she'll be okay for this half a day, or we got to get her through this next crisis.
But she thought about it constantly.
And I got to a peace with it. I said, Lord, whatever you do will be okay, because you'll give us the ability to deal with it. And we will be able to meet that challenge. And hopefully, you know, for her it won't be bad, and I hope it wouldn't be bad. But it was a hard question to face.
You really find out what you believe when you go through something like this.
You know, there were promises that I had regarding Abby, and you know, those wouldn't be fulfilled if she wasn't whole.
The days turned into weeks. There wasn't one day in time when they realized she would survive. She just slowly got better. Exactly 5 weeks after the crash, Abby went home.
I kept emphasizing to the parents this was going to be a long road. And as I always tell all my parents, that you have to take it one step at a time and one little section at a time, because if you sit back and try to look at the whole picture, you just get totally overwhelmed.
Home therapy helped her catch up physically and developmentally. She had missed so much, but Rachel and Darrell's prayers for her life and her future were answered.
I mean, she's absolutely perfect.
Abby's been back to University Hospital for 2 more operations. In December of 2009, to replace the piece of the skull that had been removed to relieve the pressure. Then again in the spring of 2010.
Because she was so young, sometimes the bone cannot tolerate the freezing process like an adult can. So we did that. We left the bone out. We took her to surgery. We saved her. Then we took her back, placed the bone, and then over the ensuing months, what happened is that the bone began to disintegrate. Little by little, not an infection, it's just little by little the bone cells began dying. So she ended up again with a large defect. So what we had to do for that is we had to have a special CT scan made with computerized software, make a special acrylic template of her skull. We had to take her back and reconstruct it.
Her family had another scare in the summer of 2010. Darrell was in the yard when he heard sirens in his neighborhood.
You know, I went running into the house to find, you know, Abby in Rachel's arms, you know, having a seizure and not coherent.
I really thought that maybe that we had her for a year more, and that this time it was it.
Abby was flown to University Hospital by Airlife and stayed overnight for evaluation. Fortunately, it was rheumatic fever, unrelated to the brain injury. She recovered quickly. Today, Abby is happy, walking and talking and playing.
Abby is as close to a miracle as you can get. I mean, anybody that knows how to read a CAT scan and looks at her CAT scan would say there's no way that this baby could have lived.
They feel so blessed to have celebrated 2 birthdays with Abby and look forward to many more to come.
You want cake?
Hey.
You want cake? You want cake? You like cake?
But some fear still lingers.
Every time I see her, I don't want her away from me because I don't want her getting hurt.
They're overflowing with gratitude for David Jimenez.
I don't think anybody else in this city could have done for Abby what he did. Nobody else could have done for her what he did. We will forever be in his debt.
Never met anybody that works as hard as the nurses in the PICU floor.
For Abby, it was the right people in the right place at the right time, knowing exactly what they needed to know.
And all the time that they put training, that all came together at one moment. You know, people have invested their lives to help their fellow neighbor and human being, and it all comes together right here at the hospital. You know, I don't know how they can care that much.